Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very, very well. Today is a good episode, whether you're joining us for the first time or whether you are a regular listener. Welcome. I have some exciting news, though, to share before we kick off this episode. We have just recently launched podcast playlists. So we've launched a new free resource for you to be able to download and access if you enjoy listening to the podcast, but you want some curated playlists to be able to dive into specific business areas or functions. We have got those available for you. So if you go to www.mayjames.com/playlists, it will be linked below. You can access 8 playlists that have been curated from Honest Business podcast episodes. So there are the episodes that exist already we've sat down, went through all the different episodes and all the different categories and put them into allocated playlists for you to enjoy. And I know for some people they said that it's really difficult now there's so many episodes to find, what it is that you're looking for. And we're going to update those regularly and probably most likely add some more in the future. So yes, feel free to download and enjoy the playlists. You can share them if you wish to with people, but that will hopefully help you with your listening journey if you're looking for specific areas and topics. But diving into our episode today, we are talking about starting a second, third, fourth, numerous different business. We've got to get it right, okay? If you've already got a business, got a successful business, maybe you haven't got a successful business, but you've already got one business, you want to start another, you've got loads of ideas. Most of us entrepreneurs have got about 10 different business ideas. We've got a running notes app in our phone of like different ones that come up. We've got the branding, we've got the thoughts, we've got the website. How many domains have we got? Where we've bought all the domains? Like, this is a regular topic that comes up. It's something that's very normal, and the whole debate around, do you action it, do you not? I get it, okay? This is something that I totally get with you. I also battle with, but I know a lot of my clients do. But I also help a lot of my clients to start the second or third or however many business that they're onto whilst they're dealing with whatever else is going on in their life. Most of them are running multiple businesses at the same time. Some people might have made a business and built a business and sold a business and then starting again. But most people I work with are wanting to add an additional business, additional revenue stream onto what they've already got going on. And so today, this episode is really diving into, how do we do that well? How do we make sure that it works? How do we know if it's the right time or not? We are going to go through a series of points and questions for you to just reflect on and have a think about that will aid you if you're getting to the point of thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start something. So, first up, I want you to get super, super clear on, what is it that you want from the second business? And I'm going to just use the term second business, but if this is your fourth business or you're going to add however many, that's fine. Just replace the word. But why do you want another business? What do you want to do with it? What's the purpose of it? And I want you to get really clear on, what does that mean for you? So don't even think about why you're doing it for all the people you're going to help or whatever it is that you're building. But I want you to think about, what is it about it that you're going to benefit from? Like, why are you doing it? What is it that you want? Is it that you're filling a void because your other business doesn't, you can't do X, Y, and Z thing with it, so you want to start something else? Is it that you have just another passion? Is it that you need it to provide you with a certain type of income and therefore that's going to do that? I.e., for some people, it's, I want some passive income, I want some semi-passive income, I'm going to put that as a new business alongside whatever you've got going on. Maybe it's that you want a business where you have no team, whereas at the minute you've got a team of like 40 people, and so you're wanting to transition into something where there is an option for you to have no team in this business. What is it that you want and why? What is your why with doing that? That has to be crystal clear. The reason I say that is because sometimes people start a second business, it's the complete wrong time, or they do it and it doesn't make sense, or they're actually chasing something that isn't going to work. As in, not the idea, I just mean the structure of what they want. So get really, really clear on, why are you doing this? What do you want it to give you? I also want you to then be clear on, what is the desired outcome? Is this a transition business where you're going to exit one business and you're moving into this being your full-time thing? Is it that you're just happy for it to have 2 or 3 or 4 businesses going at the same time? What is the desired outcome? How big is this business going to be? Is this second business going to overtake the size of your first one? Is it going to be purposely sat at a 50k a year business? Is it going to purposely sit at 5k a year? Like, what is it that you're going to do with the outcome of it? What do you want that to be? I also want you to think about, Does this business sit alongside the existing business to aid one another? And I'll go into what that means in a minute. Or are they totally separate? So for example, I have two businesses. They are completely separate. They don't connect in any way. They're not linked in any way. They're not any kind of anything, right? They're just two separate beings and they have two different purposes and they do two different things. Some people have multiple businesses, but that feed into one another, i.e., you might have a software company and you might have some kind of education business that then sit together and work together. That two things together makes a nice pair. But you need to know from the off, are they connected or are they not? And when I say connected, I'm not saying they have the same brand, I'm not saying they have the same name, I'm not saying they're sat under the same legal group or anything. I'm just saying, are they connected in any way? Do they facilitate one another? Often people start a second business because they have clients or they have some kind of opportunity presented to them, which actually means that if they had this other business, they'd make way more money or they could service a client in a much deeper way. Just get clear in your head around what is that case, or are they just completely separate? I can really recommend having separate businesses. I think it's really nice. It's really great. It provides real distance from things. It means that you can explore different industries. Like mine are sat in two completely different industries. One's a product-based, one's a service-based. Like really figuring out in your head, what is it that you're trying to build here? But the key thing, in order for it to work long-term, in my opinion, is that you have to be clear on what is the purpose of it. Because that will help dictate your time. And what often happens is the biggest roadblock tends to be time for people when they're looking at additional businesses. So you need to know from the off, is this going to be like a full-time job? Is this going to be a weekend thing? Are you doing an hour on a night? Are you splitting your time 50-50? Like, what is it that is going to mean that will justify or not justify the amount of time that it is that you're taking with something? And that's a really important piece of this experience to figure out. The other thing for you to really get clear on is, what will this give you that you don't currently have? Often people's desire to start a second business comes from external influence. It comes from external drivers that aid your motivation and excitement. So often if you're a bit bored with your first business, or you've like gotten it to a certain point and you haven't got massive growth goals anymore, starting the second business is kind of like the thing that just gets you excited again. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm just saying you have to be mindful of what is that, where's that coming from? Often you will speak to people, and many people will say, start another business, or like, you've got so much to offer in this area, like, why don't you make some money off that? Or like, why don't you add something? And I'm not saying that that's never a good idea, but I'm saying it's not always the answer. It's not always going to get you what it is that you're thinking. So really figure out, what is the why? What is the outcome? Where does it sit? The other thing you need to think about is, how is it going to affect the first business? So the reason I say this is because sometimes people are like, I'm starting this at the business, but we're trying to grow this business by like 4 times its, revenue size from the previous year. And I'm like, wouldn't recommend, in my opinion. And again, I'm not saying that for everyone. Sometimes there's an opportunity, there's investment available, there's something available where actually you just got to go for it, and it's not the perfect timing, but it is what it is. But if you can, I want you to think about what makes sense in terms of the growth goals of your original venture, and how are you going to align that with where you're going forward. There's nothing wrong with not starting the business straight away. You can spend years and years crafting what the vision is for the second business before you actually launch it. And I really recommend people do this, right? I'm a big action taker. I'm a big, just get it done, imperfect action. However, if you're going to do like a second or third or fourth, fifth business, I actually think there's a lot of value in being uber clear on what it is you're trying to achieve and what the business is and who it serves and yada yada, all the things. That often comes from spending a lot of time thinking about it, and it comes from a lot of time of observation. It's a lot of time of listening to people and seeing things. And so I really, really suggest that you think about, do I need to action this right now, or will this make more sense for me to just keep working on it quietly? I don't need to tell anybody about it, or you might want to tell people about it. It's up to you. I have did a piece of work last year with someone who nobody knows about it. They have spent some time with me, and we have built a kind of revenue model. We built like a rough like workings of how it would work and what the business could look like and what the growth potential was. But nobody knows about it. And they're just kind of making it figure things out. Actually, I think one person does know about it because I think they have spoken to someone about partnering with someone. But there's like, it's not a public knowledge thing. It's not, she's not saying like, I'm building this thing and like, you're all going to come on this journey. And like, it's not, it's a private thing. And she's, she's invested money into it because she's, she paid for my time and we had this real conversation and really got clear on the value proposition and things. But like, it's not this huge, massive thing right now. But it's working, it's behind the scenes and it's in motion. And I think for a lot of people, if they spent that time, it will allow them to figure out whether or not this is the right move. Because some people do kind of go hell for leather, chuck everything at it, and go for it, but then think, oh, actually, I'm not sure that this really sits with the wider vision of what we're trying to do with Business One, or that I'm trying to do with my life. A lot of people want to start a second business after some kind of life-changing thing. So like something's happened in their life or something's changed and they often want to start a second business. And sometimes I have to say, hang on a minute, your life has just changed so much. You already don't have enough time for Business One. You're already trying to make changes and adapt and pivot that business to be able to allow it to give you what it is that you needed to do now. I don't think starting Business Two is a great idea at this point. I'm not saying it's a no. I'm just saying, why don't we wait 6 months or 12 months until you've figured out this new normal for you and you've gotten to this point that's working. And that's important for people to hear, okay? Because you're not invincible. We all want to think we are, but we're not. We can't just execute stuff in a day and be done. The other thing that's really important is the people that can execute stuff, sometimes you might have a really robust team now. You might be able to actually, if you had an idea, you could get a website, a brand, or this thing or that thing all done within a week if you've got a team. Be very careful of how you behave around your existing team when you're building something else. That's not me saying that they won't be happy. That's not me saying that's going to cause issues. That's not me saying like they shouldn't help you. I'm just saying that a lot of team impact and damage can be felt and done when founders are just going wild with ideas and chucking things at people and saying like, oh, we're going to do this and oh, we're doing this. And it's like so jarring, which is bad enough in a business. But if there's then multiple business going on and you're saying like, oh, can you just help me with this random business that has nothing to do with what we've just briefed you on and it's nothing to do with your development plan and nothing to do with what you brought into the business in the first place, that can be quite unsettling for team members and for employees if they're kind of like, huh? What's going on here? If you've got a hiring issue, it's not something you particularly want to be doing is to bring kind of worry and frustration and unease to people by saying, oh, well, we're doing this now. And again, that's not me saying that you can't share things with your team and you shouldn't be, exploring options. I'm just saying be very mindful if you have, especially if you've got a big team, if you've got a lot of people or your business is thriving, just be cautious of what you're doing. And I know that when I'm saying this, it probably sounds really common sense and you're like, well, obviously, May. And if you've been in this space, you'll be nodding your head and agree with me. It's so easy to get carried away. It's so easy to get so into whatever it is that you're doing that you just throw everything into it. And then you sit back years later or months later and think, I could have handled that a bit better, or I didn't need to go into it with such gusto because actually it wasn't what was going to make sense long term. The other thing to think about is a lot of people who are starting second or third or fourth businesses, you're often starting it with people. So you might have a business on your own that has no co-founders, or you might be kind of a solo director, and then you might be starting another business with other people. Again, nothing wrong with that. It can be joyous, it can be great. There's so much value from having business partners. That is a very different experience though. It's a very different ball game to be sat in. It's a very different leadership situation. It's a very different way that you're going to approach taking action, making things happen, success, growth, benefiting from it. And so if that is something that you're potentially dealing with this new situation, I want you to really think about what does that mean for how I go about business? Because if you're used to playing the solo business game of like everything that you do, you just do it. If you're stepping into a venture with people that there's maybe like 3 or 4 of you, you might be, I don't want to say you will be, but it's likely that you will be surprised at how different it is or how alternative the way that you approach things may be. And that can be for the better and it can also be for the worst. It's kind of dual-ended, yeah? It's multifaceted. But it's an interesting one to think about. So let's just say you are definitely starting a second business. You're like, yep, we're doing it. I'm excited. We're going to make it happen. And as I mentioned, like, I help people do this. So I get really excited when people are like, let's just do this. And I'm like, woohoo, great. Here's what I would suggest that you do. First up, I'd really suggest, I'll put a plug for myself, I'd really suggest you come and do a strategy day with me, or even a half day. Like, if you get your strategy nailed for an additional business, the growth trajectory of it can be massive. The ease of setting it up can be way easier. Like, it doesn't have to be the same struggle necessarily if you had a real struggle getting your first business going as the second, because often there's so many other things that have now moved on that actually it's a load easier. So having a solid strategy, having a clear plan, I would argue is very, very, very important. People will say, you know, that doesn't matter and you can just go for it and see what happens. And yeah, of course you can do that. But I would highly, highly suggest spending time getting really clear on how am I going to use all the time and resource that I'm putting into this to the best of my ability to make it work off the bat. Because you can, and I think that's the difference. Yeah, you can often have a really much stronger start to a business if it's your second or third or fourth venture. But say you're not going to do that. Maybe you don't want to work with me. That's totally fine. Maybe you don't want to put any money into it. Getting really clear on what's the timeline, what are you aiming to do, what are you selling, what's the first project, what's the first product, what's your MVP, like how can you get a minimal viable product out there, how can you test it, how can you start generating cash? And I think that's really important. How can you start generating cash even if it's not the end product, right? We're not saying that you're generating whatever the actual service or the product is, but how can we create something, even if it's like a very low ticket thing, but that is pushing some money into the business? Now, for some businesses, that won't work. Like, it's not that every single business I consult on, if they're starting a second business, I'm not set on, like, we're not obsessed with trying to find that initial revenue stream. But for a lot of people, that makes sense in terms of finding an initial revenue stream. Figure that out. Figure what does that look like? How do we get that? Literally project plan. Like, how long is that going to take to get to that point alone? And then we then start looking at other pieces of the pie of what's the main product offering? What is the scalability of this? Are you trying to scale something? You know, a lot of people start a second business because they want something that they can scale. They take all of the issues from their first business in the sense of things they can't avoid, like maybe you've got a big team, maybe your profit margin's low, blah, 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 this whole of things. You're going to take those issues and you're going to find positives from a different piece. But if that's the case, it needs to be very clear as to like, how is that going to actually work? And don't use the ideas in your head as confirmation that that's going to work. So, like, really figuring out what is the market size, what are the competitors, is the competitor analysis you're doing realistic? Are you using competitors that are not direct competitors? You need to be using non-direct competitors. In 2024, direct competitors are not your issue. Your biggest issue is your non-direct competitors, 1,000,000%. Understanding the space in which you exist in, understand what are the trends of that, understanding what is consumer behavior telling us about that. Those sort of things are the stuff that's actually going to help make sure that the business you start is useful and it's adding something to whatever the industry is, rather than you just creating something and then wondering why it hasn't really taken off. The other thing I would really look at is understanding, this is something I do people, this is something that people I think find some of the most helpful stuff that we do together, is really understanding what does year 1 look like, what does year 2 look like, what does year 3 look like in terms of revenue. Revenue projections, really important. It doesn't even need to be like a full-blown sales plan, but revenue projections of understanding what is that going to look like, and having, you know, a best expected and a worst scenario so that you can see what that looks like and understanding how many sales you have to make to hit those quotas. Because when people start realizing that they need to make X amount of sales for X quota, they then start to get in their head and really contextualize what their day-to-day is going to look like, or what the business is going to require in order to get there. So it might be that you actually want to build a second business with a team, but you're not going to be involved. Whereas your other business, maybe you are the sole deliverer of something. So maybe you're going to like have a team, but you're just going to be there from an advisory perspective and kind of leading the business forward. But then you need to understand, like, right, well, if we need to make X amount of sales and we're delivering this, what is the amount of team we need, or what's the revenue, or what's the sales budget going to be, what's the marketing budget going to be. Like, when you start building that out, you can start to really see, is this really has it got legs? And it's not a yes or no. It's not a like, it does have legs or it doesn't. It's about, well, how do we change it so that it does? And often that's what I spend time with people doing. If they say, right, we want to start another business, it's about how do we craft it and design it. And business design is, especially, that I absolutely love to exist in, and something that is the biggest joy for my work sometimes, of creating business that is unique, a business model that works for them, that is crafted specifically for them. That is how we can get people to have really successful second businesses, that is not a drag, that is not a pain. It's actually super fun. It's really profitable. It adds, an extra zero to how much money they can make every year on their tax bill, like, whatever they're looking to get from it. The second business thing can be really good. The other thing I would say as well, with a second business, it requires a lot of motivation. If you're in a point in your life where life's really difficult, you've got lots going on, you've got so many external pulls from outside of your business, with your life, I'd really maybe not dive into a second business. A second business is great if you're at a point in your life where you've got space, you've got time, you're at a point where you're like, I want something else in my life, or I'm at a new point. Maybe your children have left home. Maybe you're just in a position where there's like a different period of time. I think that's great. Don't push yourself to exertion and burnout just to get a second business going, because most of the time it ain't worth it. That will not benefit anybody, including yourself, and will not benefit the health of your existing business. And I think having the strength and the leadership available to you to say, it's going to be a yes, but not right now, is one of the most admirable things you can do to yourself, for yourself. And I know that decision's hard, because I've had to make it multiple times myself, and it's so, so frustrating. Some of you may or may not know, in 2021, we were on the cusp of, or I was on the cusp of launching a whole new business with big growth goals, like way bigger than anything I'd ever built before, and was huge. The brand had it was ready, and I had to pull it. My mum died, and I just stopped. I had to stop, and that was so frustrating, so difficult, so annoying. And I'm now 2.5 years down the line. It still doesn't exist. It just is what it is, right? But I really, really understand the pain of that. And that was one of the ones where it had gotten past my really strict criteria of trying to talk myself out starting multiple businesses, because it's not a mean feat. So like, this was the one that had actually gotten to the end. It's not the one that is, the many domains you buy, or the many lists you've got, or the many business plans that have wrote. Like in this desk here, that is like a few business plans of X amount of size businesses that grow to X amount of size in 5 years or 10 years, like, that are just waiting to be executed, and probably should sell them, sell the ideas and sell the plans. But it's just one of those things. And that one was the one, I don't want to say the one that got away, because it isn't, it's still there, but it's hard to make that call. But what you can't do is do not just throw yourself at something if you know that you haven't got the ability and the capacity to be able to execute it well, because what's the point? Like, you don't do the job you want to do, you frustrate yourself, you let yourself down in some way. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I could have launched that, but like, what the hell is the point? Like, there's no point. Like, it doesn't need to happen. And so having the ability to say yes, but not right now, is so, so critical. And I really urge you to hang on to that, because there isn't a huge rush. There is a rush in the sense of, like, if you've got a business right now and you're in a market that means that you need to capitalize on whatever's happening, then yeah. But like, for most businesses, there isn't a rush. For most business models, you can wait. Most of the people that I speak to and operate within are not in like emergent industries where you've only got 6 months to make it happen, and if you don't, then it's gone. Like, that's not the reality for most industries. Most industries, you can jump in and launch something at a specific point. So I really recommend that you expand your leadership to be able to hold duality and to hold the idea of, I really want to do this, but I know that right now that's not the right time. So it's not right now, but it will happen at some point type thing. And it's a gift. It's a gift to give yourself. I have a lot of respect for people who can do that, because it means that they've gotten to a certain point in understanding themselves and their self-awareness and the world to know how much they can hold. And for people to know that they don't need to exert themselves to the point where they can't hold anymore is really important. It's important to be able to say, this is what I can manage right now, and in the time beyond that, I can do X, Y, and Z thing. And, you know, most people listen to this, you might be in your 30s, your 40s, maybe you're in your 20s, maybe you're in your 50s. Like, there's a lot of time in the world, hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, we obviously don't know what's around the corner, but hopefully, you know, we're all going to be here. 60s, you can make so much happen. 70s, like, you can start a business in your 70s. Like, the kind of catch-all of, like, when things have got to happen by has been so massively changed now that, like, your career and your businesses and your entrepreneurship journey can transcend you. Yeah, like, it can continue even when you're not there. So it's like, well, how do we create this and understand that there's no rush? Because what you don't want to do is rush into something that you think, actually, I could have spent a decade in my midlife or when I'm sort of towards the end of my life building, and it still would be as meaningful. I think that's really, really important. I'm going to end on that today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm so excited for you if you're starting a second business or a third or a fourth. Please come and tell me what it is that you're doing. I'd love to hear. I'd love to see what you're up to and your thoughts. I hope this episode has just got you thinking and kind of beginning to plot things in your head. As I mentioned, if you are starting a second, third, fourth, fifth venture and you are really wanting to do it a way that makes sense and that is most profitable and that will get you a result in a most kind of meaningful time, then come and consider working together. Let's have a chat. You can book a consultation call. We can have a chat. Maybe we decide that actually it's not worth, you know, us working together, but it might be. And I think it really helps. Well, I know that it really, really helps people to launch and to take things to market and to actually make sure that they have a profitable second, third, fourth venture rather than a one that flops and that causes them great stress and heartache. So I will speak to you next week in the next episode. Take care, look after yourself, take lots of action, and go and make some sales. Take care. Bye.